Hello, everybody. Welcome to I guess this is the 6th episode of BlindEyeLive for Tuesday, March 22nd, 2021. Give me a second, I screwed up something. Okay, that's more comfortable. I was going to run this wire behind me, but it just, Anyway, welcome to BlindEyeLive today. Hope you're having a good Tuesday. Luckily, the sun came out this afternoon in southeast Texas. It was kind of a gloomy morning. But all is good in this neighborhood. On today's show, we're going to be talking about there's been a few little free agent deals signed, which has led to some opinions about a couple teams and what they're doing. One team in particular that I haven't really talked a ton about yet. Well, I mentioned them yesterday, but they've made another signing since, so. And then I also want to talk about Desaun Watson and what's going on with him. I have not gone through like each of these lawsuits or anything, and I've mostly read from. I haven't even gotten through a third of the lawsuits, but we are now at 14 civil lawsuits against Desaun Watson, all from the same Houston attorney. And they're being released systematically, not all at the same time, so that there is brand new news every day. And this has been strategically planned out by this lawyer, and I'm forgetting his name. Honestly, this guy's doing a great job of getting publicity for the case for his clients and keeping it in the media so far. Although, to be honest, I hate when the media is overly involved in lawsuits, because it actually ends up hurting cases sometimes against legitimate predators and legitimately bad people, because false information gets out. Tons of false information can be put out, and it can kill a good case against a legitimate bad actor, because everyone involved with the case is now poisoned with false information. It can also lead to innocent people getting put away in the opposite direction. But, oh goodness. Now, this is a civil lawsuit, so you don't have to worry about a jury but being poisoned. But this is very interesting. I don't think we've seen anything like this before. Yes, we've seen Bill Cosby get, and Harvey Weinstein, but with Desaun, this is like the strategy in the rollout of these lawsuits against him are very interesting. And unlike in Cosby and Weinstein's cases, these are going to civil court. There's no criminal charges. There's been no criminal investigation whatsoever, whereas those were criminal investigations. So, anyway, we'll get into Watson a little later, to my thoughts on that. We are definitely going to get, and then later in the show, I'm going to do my top 10 offensive tackles. I believe on the first show that I did last Monday, March 15th, 14th, March 14th. I said that, no. I think I was right the first time, March 13th. Because today's actually, I think, the 23rd, not the 22nd. Yeah, today's March 23rd. But yeah, so last Monday I started the show, and I believe I went through like my top 10 offensive tackles very briefly, kind of unplanned. There's been a little bit of movement for me with some of the pro day workouts and just doing some more research on guys that I have not watched or even heard of. So um, there is a new guy in that top 10. So with that being said, let's get in these NFL free agency notes. Actually, before I get into free agency, there's one other little bit of news that has come out. The president for Oregon State University has stepped down as part of the Les Miles scandal that is going on, which this is something I haven't talked about on the show yet, so I guess I can go into the Les Miles deal real quick. So he has been fired as the head coach at Kansas, the University of Kansas football program, because of an investigation that contents has been released publicly from 2013 done by Louisiana State University, LSU. As part of this this investigation found that Les Miles was, let's remember exactly how they worded it, or at least close to how they worded it. He was meeting with female students from the university in a number of cases off campus, and on at least one occasion, it is stated that he kissed one of these girls. Now, these are two grown adults, so, well, allegedly. I mean, there are some college students who are beneath the age of 18, but the thing is here, it's not about whether or, age in this situation. Les Miles is an employee of a state university, Louisiana State University at this time. As a state employee, you are not to have certain relationships with students because you have a level of power and influence unequal to them, and that can negatively affect them. So Les Miles, as part of this investigation, it seemed pretty clear that they believed that he was engaging in some kind of potentially shady behavior. Now, there was nothing that in this investigation necessarily said that there was anything, well, other than maybe kissing one of these students, that was anything tied or anything of a sexual nature, at least that was reported. Because who knows, this may not have been as thorough as it should have been. But so many people back when when they finally ran Les Miles out of town, people were wondering why the athletic director for, was Jeff Aleva. I believe it's Jeff Aleva. Why he was so against Les Miles and why he was trying to push him out of the program for several years. Well, as part of the investigation, he recommended to the university that that they terminate Les Miles, that they part ways with Les Miles. This was in 2013. Les Miles was coach for several more seasons. Which then led to eventually Les Miles gets a job with the University of Kansas. And he and I believe the AD as well at Kansas have both been put out there. Because of these things being released. I guess this has been a little over a month ago. Well, now Oregon State's president has gotten caught up in this. His name is F. something Alexander. F. Fish Alexander. I believe. His last name's Alexander. And he has that, like, first initial before, like, the names. Like F. Scott Fitzgerald. But he has been terminated as president of Oregon State, or he has stepped down, one of the two. And he was working at LSU at that time. I can't remember if he was the president of LSU at the time or whatever, or if he was just in their administration. But he then went to Oregon State after this, and I can't remember how long. It's like I saw this on. I was going to check some news headlines real quick on ESPN.com before I got on, and you know what? I can pull that up. I'm just going to go ahead and pull that up right now. Oregon State President F. King Alexander resigns for role in Les Miles saga. Let's see. Sorry, I have to get close. I am blind, of course, or blind-ish. Well, legally blind, and really beyond that. So Alexander, Oregon State University president, has resigned amid backlash related to his role in a sexual misconduct saga at Louisiana State University, where he was president. So he was president at the time at LSU. And Aleva, the LSU athletic director, he's the former athletic director. He's no longer at LSU. Alexander left LSU at the end of 2019 and started his role at Oregon State in July 2020. So this guy hasn't even been the president of Oregon State for a year at this point. Let's see what other stuff we have here. According to the investigation report, which was handled by Hirsch Blackwell, Husch Blackwell. I'm going to say that's Hush Blackwell, or Hush. Aleva sent an email on June 21st, 2013 to LSU's legal counsel and President Alexander. Aleva wrote, "One more time, I want us to think about which scenario is worse for LSU, explaining why we let him go or explaining why we let him stay." And once again, this is as part of that, or that statement right there is at the end of a letter or at the end of correspondence that involved or that had this investigation attached, which I will repeat. Les Miles is accused of improper contact and improper conduct with female students on campus as a state employee, as the employee of a state run university. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know what he did. However, as a man who's 50-something years old, and I believe married at the time, not a good look, man. Not how you should be acting. And to a degree, Les Miles' response to this, I should say, Les Miles' response to these reports are that he was not, or that he was simply meeting and mentoring young women on campus. I'm sorry, but I'm just going to say this. As a 28-year-old man, I don't think that I, as a 28-year-old man, should be mentoring 18, 19, 20-year-old women in one-on-one settings. Like, as a musician and as someone who works on some worship teams and stuff, I actually, or for a young adults ministry, like I'm on a team with some girls who are a part of our team who are like 19, 20, 21 years old. Um, Now, obviously, like this is not like in a school setting, da 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 da. But I wouldn't put myself in this situation of like I shouldn't be doing like one-on-one like discipleship with like a 20-year-old girl. Um Now, a dating relationship, sure, that wouldn't be weird necessarily. Um Although it still would be weird cuz I have like a little sister who's like 3 years younger than me, and I think of everyone who's younger than 25 now as like children almost. I'm growing out of that cuz obviously that's stupid, but anyway, it it would be weird though for me or to me if I was doing like one-on-one discipleship of 18, 19, 20-year-old girls for the church. Like that would be weird. It'd be really weird if I was in my 50s or however old Les Miles was in 2013 and I was doing this with people who I really don't have any relationship with at all who are 18, 19, 20 years old. That's a little weird. And not to mention, for like, considering like this is he's working for a state institution, a public institution, he's a state employee. And there are standards there. This is why Major Applewhite got booted out of the University of Texas program, because he had some relationship with either a graduate student who had a role in the Texas football department or some student in the school. Now, is there anything like in terms of like his age at the time, because Major Applewhite was like late 20s, early 30s, and this person was in their 20s? Not really. But the issue is like conflicts of interest and like this idea of power in this situation, like this imbalance of power. Like if this goes bad, he possibly had the ability to make this person's life more difficult. Oh, sorry. Which Les Miles would even more so in this scenario. So this has created huge issues at like Kansas and Oregon State, and at LSU. There are a lot of people who have had a bad taste in their mouth with Joe Aleva because of how it seemingly like, why was he so against Les Miles? Because this wasn't out publicly at the time. This has been 8 years, and there were years of like tension there before Les Miles was even fired, or he resigned, but I think he was like legitimately fired. And this was never talked about. And I know a lot of LSU people who hated Aleva for how he handled Les Miles, or like seemingly trying to push him out the door. Now there are a lot of LSU fans that wanted Miles gone and that backed Aleva, but I think a lot of people are getting or have more respect for Aleva with this coming out. Now, obviously, there is some question of like, well, then why didn't he go public with this? Well, I think there's a difference between like, say, because some people are saying, well, this is tantamount to like what Paterno at Penn State, and I would say no, because this doesn't seem to be nearly as high. Like, there isn't evidence of like severe wrongdoing. Like, because the term in this thing with Les Miles is sexual misconduct. Sexual misconduct doesn't even mean that there was anything unwilling that happened, that there was anything illegal that occurred at all. It just means that from a conduct perspective based on expectations and situation that he shouldn't have been doing these things. Illegal, no. But against his contract and whatnot, yes. So, which, once again, this is based off what we know from that investigation. Like, there may be things that the investigation didn't find, We don't know. So we're just working off of this. But anyway, Les Miles, rightfully fired from Kansas. And I would say that the president of Oregon State stepping down amid this backlash that he's getting, like, well, you should have probably gotten rid of Les Miles for, when the athletic director told you, hey, he did this and we probably should do this, because I would much rather deal with, hey, why are we firing this guy, than why did we not fire this guy? So, Joel Leva having some, bigger balls than most people would or seem to have when it comes to athletics. I don't care about this guy's success. It's like, he did this, he needs to go. I'd rather be morally right and not have a national title in the cupboard than be morally wrong and have 5. So that's the Les Miles situation. I guess from that we will jump into I'll break up the cases. I don't want to go straight into Desaun from that. So we'll take some NFL for more NFL transaction news. I mentioned the Giants and liking the Kenny Golladay signing yesterday that they pulled off over the weekend. Well, they got another really good one last night as well. They signed Adoree Jackson to a 3-year, $39 million contract after the Titans inexplicably cut him. So he joins a secondary that has former Titan Logan Ryan, whom we let walk last offseason, and helps continue to improve the Giants. The Giants have re-signed Leonard Williams to a 3-year, $63 million deal. They signed Kenny Golladay to that 4-year, $72 million deal, and now they've signed Adoree Jackson to a 3-year, $39 million deal. This was a team that needed infusions of talent. Well, they needed to keep Leonard Williams because he was their best player on defense last year. But everyone needs more corners and better corner play. And everyone needs a big, strong, physical number 1 wideout like Kenny Golladay. Or I guess necessarily he doesn't have to be the most big and physical, like if you've got Stephon Diggs or Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen, Peak Antonio Brown. Like, those guys are extremely useful too. Or, are extremely legit players. But having a guy like Golladay, especially on a roster where you have guys like Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton, adding a guy like Golladay, he adds an element that they don't have. So the Giants spending a lot on those 3 deals, but I like those deals. I think these are good moves. So New York Giants, and getting, in terms of Jackson, young, still ascending talent. He's had some little injury issues, but I do like the signing for him. And I'm a little bullish on those moves. Like, people can kind of crap on Gettleman for certain things, but I think Gettleman's been a fairly solid GM. Yes, he has a tendency to overdraft. big guys. I think he drafted the wrong offensive tackle last year in terms of the guys up there. Like, I had Tristan Wirfs as my top tackle. He was the 4th tackle drafted, and he was an all-pro at right tackle last year. As a rookie, he was awesome. Mekhi Becton was great. He was my number 2. I had Jedrick Wills as my number 3 tackle, and then I had Andrew Thomas number 4. Out of all 4 of them, Thomas was definitely struggled the most. Because out of the 4, he was the least. I think part of it was out of the 4, he was the least athletic. He is a really smart player, really sound technician. I think he's still got a bright future because I totally believed Andrew Thomas was a easy first round pick, and I totally understood like him even going top 10. And there was a lot of buzz that he was going to go to the Giants, and it didn't necessarily surprise me because I could see how a lot of people saw Mekhi Becton and were like, yeah, but he's so big. Like, can he really can he really be that legit good? And it's like, yes. Yeah, he was legit in year 1. So, but I like what the Giants are doing. The Broncos signed Kyle Fuller. I can't remember if I mentioned this yesterday. They got Kyle Fuller, 1 year, $9.5 million deal after the Bears cut him. So the Broncos now have signed. They have re-signed Justin Simmons to a record safety deal in terms of annual average value. 4 years, $61 million, which is $15.25 million a year. Yeah. They have they signed Ronald Darby to a 3-year, $30 million deal at corner. Don't like that one so much. Darby has a lot of upside, like when he's healthy, and he has great physical traits. And honestly, his physical traits actually fit the Broncos scheme really well, but I don't know. But Kyle Fuller's great, and he can play outside or in the slot. You get him at 1 year, $9.5 million. I think that was a really good deal. Which a lot of people are like, man, everybody was kind of mocking a corner to the Broncos at number 9, and now people are like, oh, are they going to go offensive tackle maybe now? Do they go with... Because where they're picking at right now, it's still like corner kind of... And based on their roster construction, corner is really the only thing that makes sense for them to take there, or offensive tackle. So I'm sitting here looking at like the draft board there, and at 9 you've got Patrick Surtain, you have Caleb Farley, who seem to be like they're the consensus top 2 corners. I think they both fit in that scheme. Surtain, especially early on, because Fangio loves physical corners, and in their scheme, they need to really be able to tackle. It's like he really asks his corners to be physical. Farley has physical size and athleticism, but he sat out last year, and one thing he could have answered in his second year starting at corner would have been, because his 2019 tape was incredible in terms of ball hawking and things of that nature. Because he's a converted wide receiver. When the ball's in the air, he turns into a receiver on deep routes. It's like he's the guy that the pass is intended for, and the way he goes after it. But he wasn't really physical in terms of his tackling. Like, he has physical tools, but he doesn't play physically. And Fangio runs a physical defense. You look at some of the corners he had with the 49ers when he was their defensive coordinator. I want to say that um, like Nate Clements in the end of his career when he was with the Niners, like Fangio might have been defensive coordinator then, but I might be wrong. But you look at the defenses he coordinated for Jim Harbaugh. Those teams were extremely physical. You look at him as a defensive coordinator for the Broncos, because I believe he was the defensive coordinator for the Broncos under John Fox. I know he was with the Bears. Like he you look at some of the corners he had with the Bears. Well, they drafted Kyle Fuller for one. Kyle Fuller is a pretty physical corner. Man, I'm trying to think back to like the dadgummit. Kind of blanking on their secondary right now. He may have still been there when they drafted Eddie Jackson. But they had a lot of turnover at corner in the past few years, so I'm kind of blanking. I would need their stuff up in front of me. But anyway, just trust me on this. And you can ask other, or you can listen to other analysts. Marcus Whitman has talked about it for sure. How Fangio likes physical corners who play the run well. To me, I would lean Surtain for the Broncos then at 9. Now, with these signings at corner, I'm wondering if they draft a corner. Now, Fuller's on a 1-year deal, so that doesn't necessarily preclude the Broncos from drafting for the future, because that's what you should do in the draft. You draft the guys that you believe will develop best long term and who are at positions you value most long term. Like, draft and build areas of strength rather than drafting and hoping you get a guy that develops quick enough to help shore up a weakness right now. That's not necessarily a bad strategy, but if you're going to do that, don't just draft a guy for this year. You need to be drafting guys for the long haul. Because there are guys every year that are like, yes, these are solid players, but are they going to be anything, or how much can they develop beyond that? Like, do they have the tools to really grow beyond that? Because at positions other than quarterback, your athletic traits really are going to lock your ceiling in. Because there's things that every quarterback, even really polished and cerebral quarterbacks coming out of college, still have a lot to learn, still have a lot to develop. In those areas, let alone, in harnessing their physical talents. At the NFL level, you have players who they haven't begun to scratch the surface of their physical potential yet. Now, a lot of these guys don't, but there are a number who do. And if you're drafting guys who, yes, they're solid, or they're very well developed, but they don't have, great physical traits, it does cap, many of them have a capped ceiling as solid players. These are solid pros. These guys are decent starters at their positions. They're pretty good starters at those positions. But when I'm drafting in the first round, I want a star. I want a guy who has star potential. I want a guy who is going to pop down the line. I want a guy. These are picks that I'm trying to get cornerstones for my franchise. Guys that I'm excited about having to pay down the line. So, but for the Broncos, they could still draft a corner, but it does kind of lend itself to be like, well, maybe now we go offensive line, try and do even a better job of protecting Drew Lock. Hopefully, all of his top weapons don't get hurt this year. Like, hopefully, Cameron Sutton and Noah Fant are recovered and able to are fully recovered from their injuries and able to get back on matchup nightmare tight end moving forward. And Cameron Sutton's a really nice physical receiver. I don't know if he's really a number one guy necessarily, but he dominates downfield, particularly on post routes. He's a big physical receiver, really good on digs. Like he's great over the middle of the field, and he's great on contested catches. I still see Judy as being more like the number one guy, though. But they have a great. If people are healthy, the Broncos have an embarrassment of riches between Sutton, Judy, and Hamler at receiver, like as their top three receivers, and then Noah Fant at tight end as their top tight end. And then you've got Melvin Gordon and Royce Freeman at running back. But this also could be the thing. Maybe the Broncos aren't sold on Drew Luck long term at this point. Although I think John Elway is absolutely still on the Drew Lock bandwagon. I would be shocked if they went quarterback at 9, but who knows at this point. Because I see like Trey Lance and Justin Fields. And I can't imagine how John Elway would be sitting there and be like, I mean, yeah, but we've got Drew Lock. Like, these two guys are absolutely better prospects than Lock. And I love Lock. Or should I say, compared to other people in the 2019 draft, like during that time, I was really high on Drew Lock, and I thought this guy's definitely the second best quarterback in the class. If people were considering Daniel Jones and Dwayne Haskins as first-round quarterbacks, then Drew Lock is a first-round quarterback. I would say, like, Drew Lock was... I would rate him... Because, like, I had Jordan Love as a first-round quarterback last year. I would rate Drew Lock kind of in that similar range, although maybe a little worse than Love. Love's a little more athletic and a bit more accurate. But yeah. So, but anyway, back to like, looking at these free agent moves for the Broncos. It does kind of cloud the idea of like what they're going to draft now, because everyone seemed pretty sure. You know what? They're going to go corner at number 9. Of course, we don't know anything for sure until the picks are in, but that's going to be interesting for sure. The Rams have signed Desaun Jackson to a contract, so he's going to join a receiving corps with Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, and Van Jefferson, as well as tight end Tyler Higbee, presumably as just a deep threat. Maybe he'll catch some drags or whatever, some screens, but it looks like they've brought in Desaun Jackson on a 1-year deal to be a clear out for everyone else. Which, not a bad move, to be honest. If you're pulling safeties, down the field, that's opening up space for Matt Stafford to throw into, and Matt Stafford with his arm doesn't need a ton of space to get the ball into his receivers. So that's a little bit of an interesting development, although we'll see if Desaun Jackson can even go through like 2 practices in a week without some kind of hamstring or calf strain at this point. believe there was one other signing that I'm blanking on. Oh yeah, the Green Bay Packers have brought back Kevin King. I didn't see any terms of the deal. I just know that Kevin King is going to be back with the Packers. Their second round pick from the 2017 draft, who is kind of the scapegoat, if you will, for the loss to the Buccaneers in the championship game. I mean, he wasn't great in that game, but to be fair, he was not allowed to hold every play like Sean Murphy bunting was, or Sean Murphy bunting was for the Buccaneers. He just, I mean, which is the absolute truth. That other guy held every play during the game. He even got an interception because of holding. But Kevin King does it one time, and it iced the game for the Buccaneers because he was held to a different standard. So I really liked Kevin King when he was coming out of college at Washington. He seemed like he had really great tools at corner. I mean, there just aren't too many guys who are 6'3", run the low 4.4s, he had a really low 3-cone drill. He just seemed like, man, this guy has incredible tools. This guy could be an elite, or might turn into like a special player at the position. That hadn't happened yet. I think some of that might be the Packers scheme, because Josh Jackson, who they drafted in the second round in 2018 out of Iowa, long playmaking corner, hasn't really worked out either. Makes me think some of it might be scheme. Jair Alexander has worked out, but I also thought Jair Alexander was a sure thing. But it also depends on your scheme too. Like if you moved King and Jackson to teams like Seattle, San Francisco, I would argue they'd probably be far more successful. Or even San Diego, when Gus Bradley was defensive coordinator there. But I could be wrong. But yeah, Kevin King's back with the Packers, which isn't too much of a surprise because I didn't feel like there was a big market for his services, and it would just kind of make sense to just stay put. But yeah. So with that being said, I'd like to get into some pro day little stuff with some different prospects. Couple guys came out of the Northern Iowa pro day, small school, FCS school. Their offensive tackle, I believe it's Spencer Brown, 6'8", 311 pounds. His short shuttles were ridiculously low. Actually, I've got the numbers right here. I will read them. I've got to find them, but I've got them in text here, and that'll Well, oh, wrong chat. Okay, so here are the numbers. Yes. So offensive tackle Spencer Brown, Northern Iowa. He had a let me enlarge this. A 4.39 short shuttle and a 6.99 3-cone. So to put that in perspective, for like a 3-cone, typically, like the guys who are getting 7 seconds or less in the 3-cone are not over 300 pounds. Like, it's impressive when guys who are like 250 get sub 7 on the 3-cone drill. And your elite pass rushers tend to end up but definitely below 7, but usually even sometimes below like 6'9", 6'9", 5. But I would say getting below 7. So he's got, and if you've never seen a 3-cone drill, you're running around these cones and you're like bending down. It's kind of like short area, quickness, agility, change of direction. And he's putting up ridiculous numbers for a defensive end 3-4 outside linebacker. Better than a lot of, I mean, heck, that's probably better than most tight ends, even like pretty athletic ones. You don't see guys at 6'8" doing that either. 6'8", 311. Like, because it's hard to get down that low when you're 6'8". A lot of your guys that end up like in the low 6'9s or or below 7 foot are 6'4", 6'3" shorter. So extremely impressive times. That short shuttle's ridiculously quick too. And then just as impressive, he had this guy ran sub 5 second 40 times as well, which that's crazy. You don't see guys like that tall and over 300 pounds like running sub 5. It's not quite Tristan Wirfs last year at like 6'5", 320, 325 running like in the 4.8s, but it's close. And this is a small school guy, and he also had like a 9'9" broad jump and a 31.5" vertical leap. Like 31.5 inches isn't like insane, but the dude's 6'8", 311 pounds. That's really good explosion for a guy that tall and that heavy. Because 31.5 inches, you're basically getting like, and with his arms, his arm length is ridiculous. Like, that would be like a guy who's 6 foot jumping like 42, 43, 44 inches. Now, obviously, like your offensive tackle's not going up for like passes or whatever, but the idea is he has this ability to create explosion with out of his blocking stance. Like for an offensive lineman, that would be more like in the run game. I can imagine him at like right tackle just firing off the line and just blasting back a defensive end. And then that 9'9" broad jump is very similar. It's like it's lower body explosion and power. And 9'9" is extremely good for a guy his size. And then he has his teammate, defensive end, outside linebacker prospect, Ellerson Smith, which I had seen some write-ups for him from, I believe it was Mel Kiper or Ty McShay, one of the two, had written him up on the ESPN site for one of the articles that they would do like during the season, and it might have been last year. But I've seen, and then I've heard several different other draft Nick type people like myself talking about him. He has really good production, and his pro day really matched that. So Smith, who is trying to read this here. So he's 252 pounds, and I believe he's like somewhere in that, like around 6'4", 6'3", 6'4", 252. Ran a 4.7 or ran 4.74 and 4.76 40s, 4.74, 4.77 40 times, which pretty good at 250. Like, he's not amazingly fast, but being in the mid 4.7s, that's solid. And his explosion numbers, though, like how quickly he can accelerate, because a lot of times it's not about hitting your top speed, because you're not going to hit your top speed on a necessarily like in a pass rushing situation, but it's what speed you can get to and how quickly you can cover ground. Like how quicker is your first couple of steps. This dude had a 41.5-inch vertical and a 10-foot 7-inch broad jump, which are insane. A 41.5-inch vertical is elite at pretty much every position. A 10-foot 7 broad jump is basically like elite at every position. So this guy has really great lower body explosion. And he probably made himself some money and moved up draft boards. Both of these guys did with their pro day numbers. And on top of that, with some more pro day stuff, a guy I mentioned in my top 10 receivers bit, what was that, yesterday? That I went through my top 10 receivers? I believe it was yesterday. If not, it was Friday, but I believe it was... No. I think it definitely would have had... I think it was yesterday. Anyway. Anyway, Rondale Moore, he had his pro day. He had a 42.5-inch vertical and ran a 4.2940. Dude is blazing fast, and anyone who watched him, particularly, it's like he had some injuries sophomore year, and then last year he opted out at first, then he ended up opting in. He only played like 3 games maybe, something like that. But his freshman season, which was the year they upset Ohio State, he lit up the Big Ten his freshman season. He was incredible, and he was extremely good against Ohio State. This guy can do it all as a receiver, returner, and he can line up in the backfield. He can line up at running back. Some if you wanted. Although to me, I would more. It's like I'd probably start him off in the backfield or motion the backfield for like some different kind of more gimmicky stuff. But this guy can play outside in the slot. And I can't remember what his 3-cone was, but he had a ridiculous 3-cone time yesterday too. He's got great vertical explosion. He's got great horizontal, or should I say lateral quickness, a lot of wiggle. He's a special kind of player. And if of all of the player, like, because there's a bunch of like kind of smaller, like really speedy, agile type guys, like Jalen Waddle, of course him, Elijah Moore, or Kadarius Toney. Although I don't think he has the top speed of these other guys. Jalen Darden and Anthony Schwartz later in the draft. Rondale Moore is the most like Tyreek Hill. He has a strong lower body. Because you're not going to see, like, Jalen Waddle's not, or doesn't have, like, I don't think he has a 40-inch vertical. If he does, it's barely 40 inches. Which is not a knock on Waddle necessarily. Like, I love Waddle as a player. I think he's a great prospect. But I would say that Rondale Moore has the most he has basically all the same traits Tyreek Hill did. And his tape, he shows all the different things you would want out of a receiver. He's not like Tyreek Hill, he's undersized, but he is built strong. and he plays bigger than his frame down the field. And Moore might be a better like contested catch receiver than Tyreek Hill. So I really like Rondale Moore, and I think this all the scouts are like, this is probably going to move him back up draft boards. Like, okay, this guy hasn't lost anything from like that freshman year. It's like this guy has all the tools, and we should be able to utilize him, and maximize those traits. He should solidly be in the first round discussion. He might, and with those numbers, because I wasn't sure if he was going to run that fast. Like, I thought he was a lock to run in the 4.3s, but I wasn't sure where. And while I believed he had great vertical explosion, a 42.5-inch vertical, 43-inch vertical is ridiculous. I mean, that's nutty. So I would say he's probably now my wide receiver number 4. I had him wide receiver 5 behind Terrace Marshall, but I think I'm moving him ahead of Terrace Marshall. I love big body receivers like Marshall who have athleticism, but Moore plays bigger than his size, and he is just so versatile and so explosive. Like, he has game-changing speed. Just game-breaking speed. So, those guys, all 3 of those guys, definite huge pro day winners right now. Devontae Smith chose not to work out at his pro day, not to run, not to do anything, just meet with teams and talk to teams. And I think that's fine. It's like Alabama has GPS tracking data, and that stuff is available for everyone, or is available to scouts. And honestly, I think most people can get a hold of that data. So teams have that data. Jalen Waddle was the fastest man in college football last year on GPS tracking data. And even like when he was getting ready and playing and in the Ohio State game, like for the Ohio State game, the national championship game, in practices, Alabama was saying that he was hitting his normal speeds already then. He just was sore and still a little stiff on that foot, which makes sense. It was fixed and it was healed. Like it was structurally sound, but the healing process wasn't totally finished. Like, and that area had been stiff for so long that a lot of that stuff was having to loosen back out. Is one of the ways. Like, he was playing in a lot of pain, but it wasn't pain because things were still like damaged necessarily. So, or on that ankle. So those guys don't have to. It's guys with great tape, and now with the GPS tracking data, really, a lot of these guys don't have to work out. Like Jamar Chase, maybe will choose to because he sat out the season, but I don't think he needs to. Devontae Smith doesn't need to do anything because we saw it all last year. You could see he seemed faster and more explosive last year, and he was already a great receiver before then. We have 4 years of tape on him, 3 years of excellent tape, because his freshman year he played sparsely, but he had some big catches, particularly the biggest catch of the year that year, and one of the biggest catches in college football history, catching that game-winning TD in the national title game from Tua in overtime. But his sophomore, junior, and senior year tape, Devontae Smith got better every year. And without question, by a receiver in the history of college football last year. His numbers were extremely close in every category, or better than Jamar Chase's. Or should I say, he almost had as many yards and he had as many touchdowns or more touchdowns. And he played at least 2 fewer games and maybe 3 fewer games. So, I think it was 2 fewer games. And Waddle was out a lot of the year. And I don't know. And Mechie's really, really good. But I don't know if Mechie's even as good as Terrace Marshall had around him in 2019. Ooh, there was a blip. Hope I hadn't been gone for a bit there. But anyway, yeah. So Smith had, in my opinion, the best year in college football season of any receiver in the history of college football last year, and so I would suggest, I would say, like, he doesn't need to work out. He doesn't need to do anything. We know what he is. We know how good he is. He has nothing left to prove. Sorry, I've gotten getting some new some updates from the Alabama Pro Day. Holy crap. Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle for the Alabama Crimson Tide, ran a 4.8940 at 312 pounds. This is the reported time. Is a 4.8940 at 312. That is ridiculous. And I've had Leatherwood as more of a guard so far, but that shows some explosion. Man, that's gonna take a number of scouts back to the tape for Alex Leatherwood, because he came into, and actually he went into last year as, like, arguably the top tackle prospect last year. It was like him and Andrew Thomas were the top two, and then there were a lot of people high on Wirfs, and then Wills was on the radar, but Wills, like, really jumped up and Leatherwood kind of fell. And then Leatherwood kind of came in this year as, a potential, people saw him as like a first, maybe early second, but a lot of people had him in like mid-late first round territory. And then he just kind of fell. Like, it seems like people are kind of meh on Leatherwood's tape or whatever, or they're just not sold on him being elite. And now 4.8940 at that size, those numbers have panned out pretty well for prospects the last few years. So Alex Leatherwood with a big pro day, or seemingly a pretty good performance day at his pro day. And actually, that I wouldn't be surprised if that is streaming on like NFL Network or something right now, because I know they supposedly are supposed to be doing a bunch of pro day coverage. So yeah, that might make me want to rethink my rankings of my top 10 offensive tackles again, like I did with Brown. But I've kind of got Leatherwood listed as a guard right now. And some more numbers from the Bama Pro Day. Patrick Surtain, I haven't seen a 40 time, but appears he had like a 39-inch vertical, which at 6'2", that's a really good number. It's not Ellerson Smith elite kind of explosion, but for a 6'2" corner like Surtain, that's a really good number. And quarterback Mac Jones, everyone's talking about Mac Jones is slow, he's not athletic. Ran a 4.8 640, which for a quarterback, I think a lot of people were probably expecting him to run around 5 seconds or something like that. It's not like blazing fast or anything. I believe Jared Goff ran a faster 40 than that. I think he was in like the 4.7s, but 4.86 is very good mobility. I mean, people were raving about Tristan Wirfs running a little bit faster than that at like 3.25, which is extremely impressive. Don't get me wrong. But Mac Jones, plenty of functional speed at the quarterback position. Let's see. But yeah, so Surtain showing off his athleticism. Everybody's been talking about Farley being this elite athlete, and that putting him ahead of Surtain for a lot of guys. And I'm sitting here like, I'm expecting Surtain to be also, he looks like a bit of an athletic freak as well. So, kind of be interested to see if, or what 40 time he has, if he's just now done the vert. So anyway, oh, there's another update. Yeah, so Surtain, a nice 4.46. 4.46 40 at 6'2", like 205, 210 with a 39-inch vert. People were talking about like Caleb Farley though running like low 4.3s maybe. If Farley doesn't get any higher than like, if Farley ends up like somewhere between like 4.35 and 4.4, it's like, and even if he's faster, if he's faster, I probably would take him over Surtain. But Surtain has plenty of top end speed for his size and length. He's an extremely physical corner. Really like him. So, yep. Because I think, because you got the Broncos at 9, corner coming into the offseason was a huge need for them, although they've addressed that pretty well in free agency. The Cowboys definitely had a need for corners. And to me, that's what they should draft. At 10, although there's a lot of people talking offensive line, I really think they need to go corner in round 1. Trevon Diggs was a really great pick in the second round. I couldn't believe he got to, it was like pick 51 or something like that. Pick 49. Because he was a easy first round prospect for me last year. But if I was the Cowboys, if I could get Surtain at 10 and pair him up with Diggs, those guys were a good corner tandem at Bama. And both of those guys are big, physical, athletic freaks at corner. And when you're looking at their division that they're in with the Giants now, they need corners. And I'm pretty sure the Eagles are going to draft a receiver at 6. That's what I'm thinking, is they're going to draft a receiver at 6. And then you have the Redskins with Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel. You need corners. Take Surtain. You have Surtain and Diggs as your outside corners. I believe they brought back Jordan Lewis, or he's still under contract with him in the slot. So you take those 2 Alabama corners, and I think that would really help their. Or you add Surtain to Diggs and have those 2 Alabama corners. I think that would be hugely positive move for them. What? I hate now how you get telemarketer or scam text messages now. So annoying. But anyway, so we are a little or about an hour 10 minutes in. So we're going to talk about the Desaun Watson situation now. Start off hour 2. So for anyone who has missed it, Desaun Watson has come under some allegations and civil lawsuits over apparent sexual misconduct, which I don't know. We'll see what happens, but this is really interesting. Depending on how you look at it, last Tuesday night a civil lawsuit was filed, and so Wednesday morning, it started getting reported on, and then Wednesday afternoon a second lawsuit was filed, and then the people started getting in touch with the attorney, and he said, we've got 4 more cases or 6 more cases or something like that, and then a bunch of other stuff, and then more people coming forward. I think Thursday or Friday they filed the 3rd lawsuit. As of yesterday, they were up to 10 lawsuits or something like that with 12 more people, or it was 12 lawsuits with 10 more people to come forward. Now I think it's like 2 more have been filed or something. Or like right now I think maybe we're at 14 lawsuits filed. It's hard to lose or to keep count at this point. This 14th lawsuit or the latest one, calling him a serial predator, which if this is like the testimony of the plaintiff in that case, that's kind of interesting, because that would be a reaction to these other incidents that at the time that she allegedly had her, encounter, she wouldn't have known about any of these. So maybe these are the lawyer's words, in which case you're bringing so many cases. It's like, oh, so you've waited to file this one, so these other ones would have been filed first, so you could say this person's obviously a serial predator. This is extremely interesting from a legal standpoint, because I don't know if we've ever seen anything like this before. This kind of rollout of lawsuits and accusations. And I'm not going to presume or should I say, we do not know whether this man is guilty of any of these, one of these, all of them, some of them. We don't know whether he's innocent at all. We don't know whether these are lies. We don't know if these are true. These allegations are true, whether they're lies, whether they're partially true, whether they're misunderstandings, whether they were stating the fact or correctly, or speaking truth when they said that maybe this guy was, you know, completely naked except for like a towel over like his genital region or whatever. From what I understand, for a lot of massages, that's normal. But once again, I've never been to a massage parlor or been to a masseuse, whatever. So I don't know. But I do know some people who do, and they said, well, that's not totally abnormal.